Hey there, beautiful souls. I'm Colynn
And I'm Meridee.
and welcome to Spiritual Sisters with Sass, the podcast where two sisters with a passion for spirituality and a touch of sass come together to explore the exciting world of self-improvement.
That's right, Colynn. We embarked on this incredible journey together, diving into different self-improvement techniques, yoga practices, and a whole array of life experiences.
Yeah, and through it all, we've managed to create lives that are abundant, happy, and constantly evolving. It's been a wild ride, hasn't it, Meridee?
You bet, sis. We've got two very different perspectives on life, but that's what makes this podcast so special. I'm all about diving in head first into life's adventures and embracing every challenge with a bit of sass. While Colynn here, she's got her own unique approach.
Yep, that's me. And I'm all about the yoga, mindfulness, and finding my Zen. And together we make the perfect balance.
So whether you're looking for some wisdom, a few laughs, or just some heartfelt stories, you're in the right place. We're here to share our personal experiences and insights with you, all while exploring the wild and diverse world of self-improvement.
So grab your headphones and get ready for a fantastic journey with us. Spiritual Sisters with Sass is here to uplift, inspire, and keep it real.
Thanks for tuning in, lovely listeners. Let's dive in.
Spirit and sass. Here we go. All right, so welcome everyone. Today we're actually talking about, you can look at it as either spiritual awakening and or enlightenment. And, I teach on this all the time, and I still I have my own experience of enlightenment, and now Meridee does as well. And that's what we're really focusing on here. But it's I teach this all the time. And within yoga, one of the limbs, the last limb of yoga is samadhi. We hear about enlightenment or moksha, kavalya. And then
all these Sanskrit words that you guys have no idea what the fuck she's talking about.
And then we also learn about something called Kundalini awakening. So what is what? And I'm still sitting with what that looks like in all the different descriptions. But one of the things that I myself have experienced is enlightenment. And not that it's an ongoing thing, because the idea is when you reach samadhi, enlightenment is ongoing. And then this bullshit world that we're living in no longer exists.
Except that it's still it's okay. So this is what we're getting into today, you guys, and I'm super excited. So basically what she's talking about is plant medicine.
Well, see, Meridee's has had a really great experience with plant medicine, but plant medicine is not the only way.
This is true.
When we were talking about it yesterday, after she had enlightenment experience, I said, this is how the gurus felt all the time. They were able to access this. And this is what Buddha speaks about. And this might hit differently now. He says, and I may be messing up the quote, but it's before enlightenment, carry the water, chop the wood. After enlightenment, carry the water, chop the wood. Because nothing changes except your perspective.
Got goosebumps. But it was a different experience prior to it's been wild, you guys. That's what I have to say about that. It has been a wild ride. And there, like Lynn said, there's multiple ways to get to this. Meditation, not one I was able to accomplish, but it is something that people can do.
But now that you've touched on it, the idea is that the experience is more attainable than it was prior. Right. So now if we look, so we've got 8 limbs of yoga, right? It's what most people know as asana, right? The physical postures, but that's actually the 3rd limb. So we've got the yamas and the niyamas, and the yamas are directly a way to get in touch with enlightenment. When you show up in a way that you're non-harming, you're not lying, you're not stealing, you're not grasping, on and on, you're clean, all those things, then you can reach enlightenment, and you're preparing your body for that. And then we have asana, which is the postures, and then pranayama, which is breath control. And then we move into pratyahara, which is withdrawing the senses. Because if we're attached to the outside world, that's why you put the blindfold on. When you're attached to the outside world, you cannot be enlightened because you have all these worries and stresses going on, and you're still kind of like a physical body. And then we have intense focus. So the intense focus and the sense withdrawal is what brings us to a place of meditation, which is the seventh limb. And the eighth is samadhi. The seventh and the eighth aren't things that you can do, they're things that happen to you. So when you get your body ready and prepared for enlightenment, and then you move your energy with physical practice, and you use your breath to go inside, and you shut off the outside world, and you intensely focus on finding your true self, which you experienced, then this is how we hit enlightenment. My experience with enlightenment, the first time I was on with a scientist. This gentleman was he tried out for the Navy SEALs, didn't make it, and therefore still in the Army. He was then forwarded to a division of AI, where his job was to create the emotion of empathy for AI, so that our worries or concerns of AI taking over didn't happen, because AI has empathy for humankind. That's the idea. That's what he said to me on the way to our ayahuasca journey. And I was beside him when he had a DMT experience, and I remember he filmed it. And then as he was coming out, he was still laying down, and he said he hit about 60 to 70% of the experience he hit within meditation. So plant medicines may support us, but they still are not as intense as an actual, like, full on through meditation. And he hit it through Zen Buddhist meditation. So we have meditation. Another experience is breath work. Breathwork is a really quick way to get in touch with that sensation within your own body.
That's the get high on your own supply, you guys, and it's no bullshit.
Yeah.
Take a breathwork class and your mind will be blown.
Yeah. And then there's said to be experiences of, like, all you have to do is be in contact with a guru that has hit enlightenment and or samadhi. So we have these experiences shared from Ram Dass with his guru Babaji, and all of those experiences. There's even a story where Ram Dass shows up. Like, Ram Dass was kicked out of Stanford for experimenting with psychedelics, LSD specifically. So Ram Dass goes to India to go meet his guru, and his guru says, you know, he was giving out LSD to all the followers that were there. And his guru says, give me that. And so he's got a vial of acid that's supposed to last him all the months that he's in India. And the guru takes the whole thing. And Ram Dass says, like, no, Baba, like, no, you'll like, you won't kill yourself, but you'll never come back from this. And so everybody sits in awe, and they wait, and they're sitting at his feet for like an hour and a half. And they're like, it's not hitting him. Nothing's changing. He's like, because I feel like this all the time. Nothing happened to him. And then Ram Dass was pissed because all the acid was gone. So his experience was like, when he looked around, the whole world was breathing. He was in that samadhi of, like, you are connected 100%.
I feel like let's quickly touch base on the different kinds. So Lynn has mentioned meditation. She has mentioned breath work, which are great natural ways to get to it. If you're struggling with that, there's also plant medicine, and the different plant medicines. Lynn and I experienced.
Yeah.
San Pedro together.
Yeah, which is known as Wachuma in the medicine world.
And it was far more interesting for her than it was for me. However, I didn't hit enlightenment, but I left there with an experience which made me appreciate my sister more. And that was the lesson I had within that, while also spending the entire time purging is what they call it. And that's how you know the medicine is working, because it purges your system and cleans you out.
Well, not necessarily. Like, the experience of Wachuma is not a purgatory one. You're a purger.
I am.
So for you, it was one time I was there, and the facilitator's sister was purging for the entire retreat, and all the rest of us were totally fine. It
It was very much me, because even
Yeah.
on our way, it's very interesting the way your body can prepare for it as well. So on our way to the retreat that was the San Pedro retreat for us, I actually had to have Lynn pull over the car and puke my guts out, prepping for this without me personally, this human, knowing what was going to happen. My physical body knew what was going to happen and started the process before we even got there. So
in the medicine world, they call it cooking. As soon as you make the decision, you start to cook. So you imagine that you just turned the element on underneath a big Dutch oven. I think of a Dutch oven with water in it. So you've just turned the element on. You've just like lit.
oh, hi.
Our internet's on fire today. So we call it cooking. And the minute that you say yes, it's like you light the fire. And this is actually like the medicine world has these explanations and they fit within the yoga world and they actually fit within our world. Like once you say yes to coaching, what happened? The minute
My physical body.
we had a whole conversation on it. The minute that Meridee said yes to her coach, I mean, she hadn't even said yes. And we were already having a session about it. And you remember how impactful that session was? She was cooking.
Yep.
So then that's what happened is like all the shit started to bubble up. Her body knew exactly what was going on. Her soul knew exactly what was going to happen. And in order for her to shift, she pukes. Some of us poo. Some of us yawn. If you've ever
In
experienced
meditation, I'm a yawner.
Yep.
And not because I'm falling asleep, because that's how you even
Purge.
I had a person say to me, do you always yawn when you're in meditation? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, that's incredible. It's a good way to get closer faster. And I was like, oh, sweet. So there's that. I've never done ayahuasca, and it's something that I literally was like, I'm crossing it off my list because I'm a purger, and there's no way that that's something I want to experience. I would love, because I've heard of some experiences, friends of mine who have done it, gone to Peru, did the whole like week experience where, mother ayahuasca is what they call it. And she came and put their trauma in front of them and showed them and made them suffer and then pulled it away and said, now it's gone, and allowed them to fully heal. Not your experience, which was really interesting as well, because we both kind of went into it. Like, obviously I wasn't there, but I knew what was happening. And I was like, I'm so excited for what this is going to throw in her face. And then it didn't. But it did.
I mean, it
its
did
own
a lot. And the purging is actually a really cool experience. So within the ayahuasca retreat that I went on for 2 weeks, there was 7 bouts of ayahuasca. There was 2 rounds of MEO DMT. There
What's
was
MEO DMT?
the DMT, but from a frog.
Frog. Okay.
Yeah. Well,
Okay.
from a toad, actually. And that's like the experience now is that that's actually killing those toads. You can harvest it from the toads, but the way that humankind goes is we just desecrate shit. So this has been it's a Sonora toad. I may be wrong. Anybody like correct me. This is just off of memory, but it's a Sonora toad found in Mexico. And when they're afraid, you secrete it from their glands. And that is 5-MeO DMT, which is like the strongest DMT you can experience. But they're like what is it called when you go through a crop? You harvest. They're harvesting it and killing the toads.
That's awful.
So it's not ethical. Like a lot of the things that you do, it's like if you could do it ethically, that would help to keep these things like for other people to experience.
So what is the other DMT?
So and then there's DMT. Like
Okay.
there's other types of DMT.
And where are those from? Plants?
You can chemically make them, and then the experience for you was from a plant, from a tree bark, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm not like the expert on these things. And so within my retreat, there was the 7 ayahuasca, the 2 DMTs, and then we had a lot of rape or hape. We had kambo, which is a frog medicine. And then
Is that the one that you burn your skin
Yes.
with? My coach did that one.
Yeah. And then we had Wachuma. Like actually, we were in Peru, so the experience of Wachuma, like coming from Canada, having the cactus internal and external, as opposed to yeah, it was a completely different experience. Completely, it was a lot more like peyote type because it was so fresh and like didn't need to be packaged and all of that stuff. Because our experience with the Wachuma was we drank like red Solo cups.
It was
And I remember I had
awful.
two.
Oh, I had like a half of one, and I just couldn't.
But they're different. Like Wachuma is a heart opening medicine,
and it did that for me.
and ayahuasca has DMT in it.
Okay.
So there's an experience with DMT that can be very, very incredibly beautiful and scary and all of the other things. And then there's DMT itself and its different forms. The combo is you burn your skin, you put the poison in the burn, and then it almost feels like you're going to die, but it's a full body medicine that helps like with physical ailments.
So many things. My
Again,
coach
same
said
thing,
it was
being in
crazy.
the jungle and experiencing it not in the jungle is a whole different story. We're only allowed to have like a half a burn in the jungle because the medicine is so potent. Whereas when you are doing it like in North America or Europe, you're going to have several points because the medicine isn't as strong, right? It needs to travel and all of those things. So I'm like for practicing these things, but I'm for practicing these things with people
Guided.
that are experienced and trusted.
Mm-hmm.
When my sister said she wanted an experience, I said, I know exactly the person, but I would not just send people to random people.
Yeah.
There's also psilocybin. There's
Mhm.
also LSD.
Mhm.
There's peyote. There's also different experiences with sweat lodges.
And you can experience any of these different things on your own, but I feel like when you do it on your own, it's more about like, I'm going to get high than it is not San Pedro, sativa. No,
Sativa,
not
yeah.
sativa, salvia.
Salvia.
Salvia, the root of a sage plant.
Yeah, which is sativa. Yeah.
But for like, you can experience these things by just doing them on your own, but you're not necessarily going to head towards spiritual enlightenment because you're doing it for a different purpose or a different outcome. Whereas literally we landed in Costa Rica and I said, oh my God, Lynn, I'm being called. And she was like, then you have to do it. And then I told my coach, I was like, I'm being called. He's like, when DMT calls you, you go. And the experience is not at all what you expect it to be either. Like
I'll say it from an eye perspective.
I went into it with as minimal expectations as I could have and a very open mind about what it could bring me. And I didn't go in asking for the answer or anything like that. I just literally said, I just want to see. I hadn't heard anyone's experience about it. I just kind of was like, okay, I'm going to try this. I don't know what it's going to bring me, but I feel like it's going to give me some answers. Wow, did it ever, you guys. It was the most beautiful visual experience I've ever had in my life. After the first part of it, I tried to resist it even as it was like coming, I want to say to an end or a close, but it's not. It's so hard to explain to someone. So I experienced this whole journey and then all of a sudden, like it spoke to me in a sense of more. And I was like, no, I'm good. And it was like more. And I was like, no, I'm good. And then it was like more.
I
And so
always
I
think about the Dune, in Dune when the Reverend Mothers or whatever they're called, they the Jessabra or whatever.
I don't even know what that
I
word
hope
was.
the Jessed, anyways, the
Yeah.
Reverend Mother, when they have that voice, when they're like, drink,
Yeah.
that's what it was like,
It
more.
literally was.
And you're like, no, more, no. More.
You're like, okay.
Okay.
So I literally was laying there with the mask over my face and I lifted it up and I looked at the lady and she was like, just looked at me very kindly. And I was like, it wants me to do another. And she's like, no problem. And handed it to me. I took another and I laid right back down and I put my mask back on. And then it took me on another adventure. And then I got answers. And because the first time it was just this beautiful, like, oh, wow. The second time I got enlightenment. I was in touch with God. It was wild for me, you guys. I felt my heart healed. It showed me this green ball and put its hands around it and said, basically, I'm going to heal you. And then it lit that up in this beautiful green and then it let it go. And then it brought me back. And it was wild because as it brought me back and as I was feeling like, okay, it's almost time to sit up, the music ended and an ad started playing. And Lynn ran to go end it. And I was like, no, that was the perfect ending. And I pulled my mask off and I was like, you guys, wow. And it gave me the main answer that I got from it over and over was let it go. Let it go. It literally said, see this that you've got for your mom? We're going to let that go now. You don't need that anymore. I don't feel anger towards her anymore. I'm not interested in anything, but I don't feel anger towards her anymore, which feels freeing for me. I'm no longer drinking the poison, hoping someone else will die. And no, I'm not saying what that sounds like, but that's that thing you hear, the saying that says being angry at someone else is like drinking poison and wanting them to die. I don't feel that way anymore. It also gave me this opportunity it was like, stop beating yourself up. It brought my niece up. And I think we talked briefly in one of our podcasts about the fact that my niece and I had a really healing conversation. And it like came to me, and when I was sitting there, I was like, I just feel pure joy. I feel so good. And then all of a sudden I'm crying. And it was like, enough, let it go. And then it brought me another piece, and it was like, let it go. And then it showed me my other niece, and was like, she's going to be okay. And then it showed me my son, and was like, don't worry about this kid. He's got it. And I was like, what? And then it was like, you and your daughter need each other. And I was like, whoa. And then it gave me some things to give to Lynn. And the experience wasn't, I don't want to say it was not what I expected, because I was trying to have no expectations, but like, you almost expect taking this medicine, and then the medicine in the moment of this trip, you could call it, you expect that's where you're going to get it. I expect that's where I expected to get it. And though I got some of it from there, the majority of the information that I got was in the after, sitting, telling my sister and the lady who guided me what I was experiencing. And it was crazy, because as I sat there and I'd think about something, and I'd like think, say, for example, about my niece, and her name would pop up, and I'd be like, I don't need to say that. And if I didn't say it, it just kept repeating it. Like she said, that voice. And so I would say it out loud, and then it would move on to the next thing. And then I would say the next thing, and then it would move on to the next one. And then it would come up with something that I needed to give to Lynn. And I was like, no, it's not my place. And then it would be like, say it again. And I was like, okay. It was the most beautiful experience. It gave me the freedom to let go. And it really reiterated this piece of, when you doubt me, you're doubting the God that created you. And don't think you know better than I know, because I'm the one who created you, and I've got you, is literally what it kept saying. Let it go. I've got you. Let it go. I've got you. And I was like, oh, but what about this? And it would be like, let it go. I've got you. And I was just like, wow. Wow. Now, in that experience, we also did 2 tests, because we did a whole day. I did a whole day thing. And her 2 tests, I want to say, were magnetic fields of some sort test. I've asked her for the name, but I don't actually have the answers to that at this point. But in the 2 tests that she gave me, she asked me a bunch of questions first, and she was like, how healthy do you feel? Blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm like, my body is really healthy. Like, I feel pretty healthy. However, I have this like lump in my throat. I don't think it's cancer. I don't think I'm dying, but I have this lump in my throat. And she was like, okay. And so she does the first test, and it doesn't tell us anything. And so she's like, okay. And then she does the second test, and she's going through the results, and all of a sudden she's like, you have a goiter. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. Miss Nurse over here is like, that makes so much sense. And I was like, I'm confused. And they're like, a goiter is your thyroid looking for iodine. So it grows something extra to try and really attract the iodine. And so they're telling me what this is. And I'm like, you guys. And Lynn's like, our family has hypothyroid. So no kidding. We're here. And I'm telling Lynn, like, I'm not quite feeling like myself. I'm in the pool with sunscreen, major sunscreen. My hyperpigmentation is high. So I'm like, I'm feeling like maybe I'm having some hormone things at the moment. Probably going to have to go home, give myself a hormone treatment. And then I show up, and she's like, hey, that lump in your throat is a goiter. Has to do with your thyroid. My brain is like, how is this even happening? Then, you guys, she gives me acupuncture and the Rife technique, or Rife machine. And it is basically everything vibrates at a frequency. And this Rife guy created a machine that goes through your whole body and can vibrate at the right frequency to help your body fix itself, essentially. So she's like, okay, to fix the goiter, you have a 39-minute experience. And I'm like, okay. So I lay there. She just sits and works quietly. She gave me some red light therapy, which, and by the time my treatment was done, I looked at her and was like, I don't really feel the lump in my throat anymore. And she's like, I know. And we were just like, whoa, this is wild. So the whole day and the whole experience just brought me so much. I definitely encourage you, if you're feeling called, to do it, but don't do it just because you want to get high, because you're not looking for the right thing, in my opinion, when it comes to this type of medicine, because I think it needs to be used as medicine, which it helped me yesterday. It wasn't, let's go get high and like do acid. It was like, I want to learn something, and it showed me something.
The idea in the medicine world behind a lot of this is the plants are teachers, down to basil and cinnamon.
And
Like,
cilantro.
I mean, the plants are medicine. I had a guy here, and we were talking about like landscaping the yard, and I told him I want this to go, and he's like, oh, and this is like very Costa Rican. Like, so many people here are in touch with the land, and especially when they live in rural parts of the country. And so he says, well, that's actually like that's for the tummy. When someone doesn't feel well in their tummy, you just make a tea out of that and it'll get rid of your tummy ache. I'm like, oh, okay, well, don't get rid of that. And then I was like, but I want that tree to go. And he's like, well, that tree is actually poisonous, but you can use the leaves for, and he was asking like, what's that called? What's that called in English, like for fungus? And then, yeah, it's just amazing. Like all of the not all of the plants, but a lot of the plants that we can use are from a medicine perspective, especially when you live in the jungle. You can't really get to pharmaceuticals or even the hospital to fix things. So a lot of people have to do what they have to do out here. So it's pretty cool.
And I feel like the plants, as you say that, what I'm getting a hit of is, if the plant isn't a medicine for us, it's a medicine for something else.
Yes.
So like the hummingbirds.
Yes.
Need the birds of paradise and things like that. So even if it's poisonous for us, it's not poisonous for something else.
Right.
And it's just amazing the way that this whole world was created for us to, like, hello yoga.
I mean, you have to reconnect to the fact that a lot of the time when you participate in any psychedelics, one of the first things that you see are fractals, and the second thing you see is the earth breathing.
Dude, that part is my favorite. And I remember even I did like a micro dose of mushrooms by myself. I told my best friend, I'm like, come do it with me. And she's like, no, I'm scared. And then I sat there and I was looking out my window, and because I don't know what I needed. So I did it. And then all of a sudden I was looking outside and I saw the earth breathing, and I was like, it just hits you in a way that hit me in a way that I can't explain. Like, it makes you understand that
it brings down the veil.
Yeah.
It brings down the veil of the nervous system. So let's just think about this, right? Yoga is science, it's 10,000 years old. And what we know is that, you don't actually see through your eyes, right? Your eyes refract light, but what really happens is the optic nerve sends an electrical signal to the brain. You don't hear through your ears. The ear is created so that it catches sound waves in a certain way. It goes in, it vibrates the bones, goes around into the cochlea, and then turns it into an electrical signal. So you hear and see with your brain. You hear and see with your nervous system.
And you see and hear with the perception that you've been given.
Through your amygdala, right? Which is your lens. So what you're looking at, we don't even know if we're seeing the same thing. It's all at like 8 billion people, 8 billion worlds. That's one of the things. So, and that's what's really taught, is called Maya in yoga, the veil of illusion. And the veil of illusion comes up and down. And even within the sutras, which is kind of like a Bible of yoga, they speak about the fact that plant medicines can help the veil be lifted. And that's what psychedelics do, right? The reason that they're emerging so strongly is like part of what's being said in the medicine world, is because if we don't smarten up, the earth is going to die, or we're all going to die.
If the earth
and
dies,
the earth
we are
is going to be just fine. This is what's said, it's outlasted many other things, but it's trying to teach us that, I mean, everything comes from the earth. Like, without the earth, there's nothing. No, we're not probably going to head into space and live. Not now anyways. So there's this idea that the reason that it's emerging so strongly is to awaken us. And one of the biggest experiences with DMT, it's classified as reconnecting to source. And
That's what I felt.
within the
Felt it, I got
sutras,
goosebumps.
we learn about the kleshas, and I've brought these up as well. As like, why do we suffer? Well, number one, because we're ignorant, and we're ignorant to who we truly are.
Which is God.
Right? We have this veil that we're this human body, and that we're experiencing all these emotions that are in this human body. And Meridee and myself, we've had the experience of being back in source, being formless, as Abraham Hicks would say. And that experience is love. That's
Which is how come I came back feeling joy. And joy was the best word I could use, because happiness is fleeting. It comes, it goes. And joy was just a different sensation. I felt whole again. And that was a new experience for me, to feel that wholeness and to feel like everything that I've experienced and everything that I am and everything that I'm doing here is exactly how it's supposed to be.
And that's the carry the water, chop the wood. Like, now you have this knowledge or this reconnection to the feeling in the body of who you truly are. You connected to capital S self, and you still have to pay bills.
Yeah.
And
I'm
you
still
still
in this
have to
illusion.
like deal with drama. And that feels interesting.
For me, after experiencing enlightenment, which I didn't know that was what it was called. I told them what
That's
it was,
what
and
we
they were
said
like,
to her.
guys,
I said, this is
enlightenment. And I was like, no, it was not. And she was like, yeah, dude, this is enlightenment. And I was like, holy shit, that was big. After feeling that sensation though, and I have this attitude towards life that we're here to experience. So everything we experience is just that. It's an experience. It's not this negative bad thing happening to you. It's contrast. And when we have lessons we need to learn, they're there for a reason. The faster you learn them, the less you're going to repeat them. But now, after experiencing what I experienced yesterday, part of what I feel is that it's going to be okay to go ahead and experience all the things that I need to experience. Next podcast, we're going to talk about grief, because that's something else that I've had to experience very recently. And I'm suddenly more okay with the grief that I have to experience. And that is a lot of the things that plant medicine brought me, is I'm able to keep moving through this life, experiencing it as a spiritual spirit having a human experience. So I'm here to experience this exactly as I am, and it's okay. Which also then gives me more self-love and more self-compassion, which is something that I struggle with for sure. So I feel like moving through this life now, like I've had a pretty good attitude about it as it is, but now I feel more at peace with it.
Well, it's shifted. It's shifted from an idea or a concept that you say to an
a reality.
experience, an embodied experience that you've had.
Mhm.
And so I always think of like your experience now is exactly what yoga's talking about. This is it.
Mhm.
Like, there you go.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, you can say it all you want, but the true way that you can bring this into the world is actually practice it, rather than just go back to old patterns and tell everybody else they need to do this. No, let everybody else do their own
Lead
thing.
by example. Practice what I preach, which I feel I'm pretty good at, and I'm just going to go live the life that I'm supposed to live.
Yeah. So for me, I mean, all those years ago, it was 2019 that I decided to jump on I sold everything and then went on a really incredible experience for a couple years. And I always think about the veil was up and then the veil came back down once COVID hit and, business got back to booming. That's what it felt like for me. And then the last like year almost now, which is, it's been a year. It's been a year, has been like, remember?
Also, speaking of a year, for the first time in my life, I finally understood the non-lineal concept of time, in that it didn't exist for me while that was happening. And that was something I can't explain, but an understanding I came to, which was really also enlightening, I'm going to say, because there was no time in it. It just was a thing that was happening. So it was really experiential for me.
Interstellar.
Yeah, that's a good
Go
word
back
for
to
it.
that idea of interstellar where it's all happening at the same time.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, my goal now is enlightenment without medicines, because I remember when I would go and I first started with Wishuma, which was a really great medicine to start with as it's a heart opener. And we've even talked about cacao. Cacao is a plant medicine, also a heart opener. Um, and my coach would always say to me, you don't need them. You don't need them. You don't need to do this. And yet, I mean, it's been a part of my journey. Heading to ayahuasca, even talking about the purging part, it's like there's a beauty in the purging, because my experience was it was incredible. I mean, it was incredibly scary. The first day was kind of like, look what I can do. And it was amazing and beautiful. And then after that, it was just terrifying. And then it was also very healing as I continue to go through things. So, I mean, we're all about self-awareness. We're all about um, bringing attention to things that people don't talk about a lot. Is like, I had an abortion. And
I've had two.
when I was there, all of a sudden it came up for me. And it was an experience that I didn't have a lot of time. I was definitely in survival mode. My ex-husband had taken me to do this thing. And I remember we had no money. And so in that space, we were, I feel very vulnerable sharing this like so openly with people. I don't like to have opinions out there. So in my head, I'm thinking about all the ways that people will think I'm a
Are
piece
gonna
of
judge
shit.
you for it.
Yeah.
And then there's me who's like, if you don't like it, oh well, because this is my reality.
So I went through it, and I remember at the time we had no money and we were living off the same bank account, but we did not live together. That's why this was happening. And I remember he had to go out every literally 20 minutes to move the car because we couldn't afford to pay for parking. It was like we were waiting for my paycheck. It was like a whole thing. Anyways, so what happened is if I took drugs, then I needed to stay there in like and then be under observation for hours, but we had to pick up the kids from school. Like, it was a whole thing, so I chose not to. And so then we only had to stay for observation for 30 minutes. And so I remember he was like in and out, and we were doing our thing, and then I didn't have to stay, but it was quite painful. And I remember at one point I told her she could put an IV in case it was super painful, and then I would take the drugs. But like, I remember she said, can I give you something? And I was like, how much worse is it going to get? And the woman said, well, we're almost complete. Like, this is the worst of it. And I said, I'm good. Like, well, not I'm good, but I'm fine. I don't need any drugs. And so, and it was quite painful. And then, I went home. It was a whole thing. And then here I am, I'm laying down. I've taken the ayahuasca. It kept telling me to take more. The shamans are like, take more. I took more, and it was terrifying. And then all of a sudden there was this feeling. It was way down here, and I knew it, even though it happened like maybe 10, 15 years prior, I knew that feeling, and I knew where we were going because my body told me, we're going to let this go now. And I went through such incredible cramping and pains in my lower body. And then I started to shake. And then it was kind of like complete. And I remember all of a sudden we call them angels when they assist. One of the angels was standing over me. He was cleansing me. And he said, can I help you get to the bathroom? And I was like, yes, because I didn't know how I was going to walk. And he takes me to the bathroom, and I go in. I remember that was one of my biggest purges. I was on the toilet, letting loose, and all of a sudden I had to puke. I'm talking naked butt on the floor, puking on top of my poo. It was like, but I did not, like, everything was just coming out. And I remember it was like it was done. I was done, and it had been released from my body. The trauma was gone, and I felt at peace. And that was it. And then the rest of the time I laid there, and it was kind of just like, then it kind of like held me and took care of me after the terrifying, painful experience. but it was gone out of my body. And that is the reason that purging can be so helpful. Because, you know, trauma, as we've spoken about, isn't what happens to you, it's what you do with what happens to you. And your body is carrying a lot of this. And so a lot of the time, yeah, we would rather go and connect to source and be in bliss and be enlightened rather than do some of this work that's going to get us to that space, like purging. And our body does it all the time, even without the medicines. And you can reach enlightenment through breath work. That's that's probably the easiest other space that I've come to it and had very enlightening ideas. Like, remember you said if you go broke, the idea was like, just let it go because you can do it again. And that was breath work. Like when I was leaving to go do the experience, I didn't know what to do with all my stuff. I had a motorcycle. I painted it pink. It was amazing. Like it was my dream motorcycle. It was everything I ever wanted. I had all this other stuff. And in my head, it was like
the most beautiful house she had ever owned. And
but I was letting go of the house, but it was the stuff. Right? I had this hutch that I really loved, this China hutch that I really loved. Like I had some things I didn't want to let go of. And breathwork was like, listen, in the last 2 years, you have attained all of these things. Let it go. And if you decide to come back to North America, then you will make it up, no problem. And that was like okay. And then I never did go back, but here I am living in a home that's I got so much shit again that I needed to like buy a storage shed so I can put some of the shit in it. Like here we are again. So some really beautiful insights to release the struggle of this world. And one of the biggest things that I think is helpful of knowing what you've experienced now is that I don't need to fix anything. My kids, they're not mine. I had them, but they're not mine. And therefore, every human is out there allowed to do whatever it is that they are gonna do. You can't fix it. You can't stop it. You can't save them.
And when you think that you know better than they do, you are doubting them. And that's not fair to them.
Or you, or God, or anything. You're just making it worse.
Yeah.
You're just making it trust. What can you do? You can love. You can trust.
Love and support.
You can trust. You know, if your child is like a drug addict, right, and needs money because they can't eat, even you giving them money so they can eat means they can now buy drugs. Even you feeding them, like enabling, is probably one of the worst things that you can do.
Yeah.
Let
them experience what they came
them
here to experience. And we say this without an experience of our own to tell you that it's because we're not saying that's going to be easy. We're just saying we have to.
We enable them in other ways that I've chosen not to. I had an experience with my daughter. She was 16. She decided she wanted to leave my house and move in with her dad. And so she did. And she was partying quite heavy at the time, which I'm not okay with. And I mean, her dad was way cooler because he had no rules. So she goes, guess what? He had some rules because he got sick of her shit and he kicked her out. And he kicked her out and they cut her off of her phone and everything, which I was not okay with. So I actually did like help her reinstate her phone so that if she was in the most danger ever, then I could help. But I did not like give her money. And I remember I said she was on her own. She called me crying. And I said, do I need to move home? Because I was over here, like, well, not living the life, but like
living your own
living my life. I said, do I need to come home? And she said, yeah. And I said, okay, I'll come home. But you need to finish school and you're not allowed to drink.
There's rules
and you're not allowed to do drugs. Like it's just, you're not allowed to do these things under my roof while I'm paying for bills. And she said, then don't come home. And I didn't. And it was the hardest thing I ever did because do you know what I knew? My kid was then living with her best friend, and her best friend's dad was a crack addict. And they were living in a crack home. And it was,
that was a tough experience.
She was so skinny. Like there was so many things, and I loved her and I supported her in all the ways I could, but not with money. And I mean, I gave her a phone, yes, and I paid for that phone, but I don't think like she wouldn't have had a phone if I didn't pay for it. And it's not like it helped her to get drugs. Well, maybe it did, but like I felt like safety and love were the two things that I could provide her, and to tell her that I'm here, like when you need, but you're ready to clean up your act.
And not just that, But in experiencing and watching her daughter go through this, she also got to experience the judgment of everyone else deciding that she's a bad mom because she didn't come home to save her daughter.
People told me one friend I love very much, and it's just different parenting styles. She told me I would do anything for my children, and I was like, so would I, including
And
this.
that's why I'm doing it. And that was even a conversation we had, and I offered to both her and her daughter, come live with me, but there are rules. And she said, I don't want the rules. I'm going to do this on my own. And I was like, no, I'm here for you if you need anything. She never once called for money. She never called for anything. No. She did call and tell me, hey, I'm graduating.
Yeah.
Hey, I have this job. Hey,
Yep.
I think I'm like, and then she met this man, and like her life went the way it went because she went through the experience that she had.
Yes.
But to sit and watch your child experience that type of,
it was hard.
Any of those experiences is hard. And then to be judged on top of having to watch your child go through this, we all needed to support each other within that.
Yep.
So I feel like that's a really great place for us to stop, because we went from plant medicine to other experiences, but I feel like it was a really good place for us to come to a conclusion.
Yeah.
So thank you guys for joining us. And I think we might be back on Facebook Live again to start our next week's recording.
Thank you for joining us on this spirited journey today.
We hope you enjoyed diving into the world of self-improvement with us. Two sisters who found their own unique paths.
Remember, life is a tapestry of experiences, and it's how we embrace them that makes all the difference.
So whether you're on your yoga mat, exploring mindfulness, or simply navigating life's twists and turns, always keep that spirit and sass alive.
We are Colynn and Meridee Lockoff, and we're here to remind you that happiness and abundance are within reach.
Stay connected with us on social media and keep those questions and stories coming. We love hearing from you.
Until next time, beautiful souls, keep doing the work, keep sharing your experiences, and keep living a life that's authentically you.
And never forget to add a little extra sass to your day.
Spirit and sass, always.